But first, we all know the saying that if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did the tree really fall? The left seemingly live by this as some sort of mantra. If you signal your virtue and no one saw the signal, did you actually virtue signal? Try saying that 3 times fast. So much of their platform is not about what would actually improve the world or people's lives, but what looks like it is improving things. Fewer practicalities, more fuzzy, warm feelings. That's exactly what these plastic straw bans are about. So New South Wales will tomorrow ban plastic straws, cutlery, bowls, plates, you name it. And then it goes on to polystyrene food containers, single-use chopsticks, food picks, plastic stem cotton buds, even face cleansers and exfoliants with little microbeads in them. They'll all be yanked from supermarket shelves during night fill tonight. Now, any business, cafe, restaurant, bar, etc., caught supplying this stuff, even schools and community groups, faces a $1,100 on-the-spot fine, plus $11,000 in court for individual suppliers and $55,000 for corporations. That's even tougher than Victoria's ban from February next year, which will sting individuals $10,900 for supplying evil plastic straws or $54,000 for businesses. South Australia enacted a ban nearly 2 years ago. Now sure, I like the idea of reducing litter because if nothing else it's unsightly and feral, but the difference plastic straw bans will make to the environment is minuscule. This is not about actually helping the environment. It's about looking like we're helping the environment because the greenies at least need to feel like they're doing the right thing even if they're not. You had to laugh a couple of years ago when McDonald's made the change from plastic straws to paper ones. Now, Ronald McDonald can hardly claim much virtue in the obesity he's helped spread around the world, but at least he's doing something to save those poor turtles. Except he's not, because those paper straws cannot be recycled. And no word from Macca's either on the fact the chickens it later pulverises into nuggets and burgers are raised in cages and sheds. It's the same as all these awfully rich actors and businessmen and generally insufferable types who fly around the world on private jets and then dare to lecture us peasants on climate change. Sometimes they even fly them to the location, where they perform such lectures. As long as you sound like you're doing the right thing, it's all fine. People love feeling that warm, fuzzy feeling, knowing they've saved a turtle. And they definitely want everyone to see that they've done it. Now, it's not just me saying this, it's the people who research this stuff for a living. Jim Leap is co-director of the Stanford Centre for Ocean Solutions. He said in 2018, quote, "Plastic straws are only a tiny fraction of the problem, less than 1%. The risk is that banning straws may confer quote-unquote moral licence, allowing companies and their customers to feel they've done their part." He's nailed it. It's looking green so you can feel green without actually being green. And don't get me started on how awful paper straws and wooden cutlery are. Now, the last time we got on this merry-go-round was to ban plastic bags. SA banned them more than a decade ago and the rest of the country has now followed suit. But you can still get plastic bags at the supermarket, except we're told these ones are biodegradable. Now, problem solved then, surely. Except that biodegradable plastics don't break down in water, which means if they end up in the ocean, which is where a lot of stray plastic ends up, choking turtles and the like, then it still does as much damage as any other plastic bag or straw. And when plastic does break down in the ocean, it turns into microplastic, which is even worse for the environment. A researcher at the University of Plymouth put all this stuff to the test a few years ago. She took bags that were labelled biodegradable and compostable and put them in 3 locations: seawater, in dirt and hanging in open air. The quote-unquote compostable bag disappeared entirely in seawater within 3 months, but was still intact after 2 years in soil. One bag labelled biodegradable was still intact in both soil and seawater after 3 years and could even still hold groceries. Now, this stuff has to be composted in an industrial manner. You can't do it at home in your compost bin. And I'll bet you didn't know that, and nor do any of the greenies who feel like they're saving the environment when they use them. None of it is about saving the environment. As long as the greenies can pat themselves on the back and they feel like they're doing a good job, then all is right with the world. And speaking of greenies, tomorrow is of course Melbourne Cup Day, which means the once a year bleeding heart animal liberation morons are defrosting and preparing for their annual outing. Now you know the people I'm talking about, the nup to the cup nuffies who conveniently ignore that racing goes on for roughly 364 other days of the year, but they have to come out on the first Tuesday in November to prove what virtuous, caring people they are. Now they've been doing this for years, but the more they shout into the abyss, the more irrelevant they become. These people have lied and carried on for more than a decade, and they were given their test case this year. After 2 years of practically zero attendance allowed at racetracks because of COVID, the racecourse gates have opened back up. Now, if racing was awful and unfashionable, as these rent-a-crowd protesters claim, and they do claim that support for racing is on the slide, then surely no one will be going back to the track this year after missing out for 2 years. But on a cold, miserable, rainy Melbourne Saturday just last weekend, 71,000 people rocked up to Derby Day. People aren't saying nup to the cup, they're saying yup to the cup. The number will be even bigger tomorrow at the Melbourne Cup, and I'll be one of them. And there's only one thing these people hate more than the Melbourne Cup, and that's jumps racing. But unfortunately for the activists, the Warrnambool May Carnival in Victoria's Western Districts, 4 hours out of Melbourne, the biggest jumps racing event in the country with one of the longest steeplechases in the world, attracted a crowd of 30,000 this year and had record betting turnover. The protesters didn't even bother to rock up to the Grand National Steeplechase in Ballarat this year, which is usually one of their go-to targets. They are fringe loonies who wouldn't know a horse from a koala, and the punters, thank God, have proven it.